Vladimir Yulyevich Vize was a Russian scientist of German descent who devoted his life to the study of the Arctic ice pack. His name is associated with the scientific prediction of ice conditions theory. Vize was a member of the Soviet Arctic Institute and an authority on polar oceanography. He was also the founder of the Geographico-hydrological School of Oceanography. Arctic expeditions. In 1912–14, Professor V.U. Vize went with G.L. Sedov's expedition on St. Phokit Novaya Zemlya and Franz Joseph Land. After the Russian Revolution, Professor Vize went on a number of Soviet Arctic expeditions. In 1924, oceanographer Vize studied the drift of Georgy Brusilov's ill-fated Russian ship Street Anna when she was trapped on the pack ice of the Kara Sea. Professor Vize detected an odd deviation of the path of the ship's drift caused by certain variations of the patterns of sea and ice currents. He deemed that the deviation was caused by the presence of an undiscovered island whose coordinates he was able to calculate with precision thanks to the availability of the successive positions of the Anna during its drift. The data of the drift had been supplied by navigator Valerian Albanov, one of the only two survivors of the St. Anna. Finally, the island was discovered on 13th of August 1930 by a Soviet expedition led by Otto Schmid aboard the icebreaker Sedov under Captain Vladimir Voronin. The island was named Vize Island after Professor Vize, who was at the time aboard the Sedov and who was able to set foot on the island whose existence he had predicted. In July 1931, Professor V.U. Vize led an expedition on icebreaking steamer Maligan to Franz Joseph Land and the northern part of the Kara Sea. He carried out meteorological, electromagnetic and hydrological observations during this expedition, along with other scientists like N.V. Pyngan and R.V. Kotsishvili. Other members included technicians whose mission was to locate a suitable place for a Soviet floatplane base in Franz Joseph Land. Captain D.T. Cherkow was in command of the icebreaker. During this expedition, German airship Graf Zeppelin made a rendezvous with icebreaker Maligan at Bukta in Hooker Island, Franz Joseph Land. At Rudolph Island, Professor Vize and N.V. Pyngan recovered artifacts from the abandoned huts of the 1904–1905 Ziegler Fiala Polar Expedition to Zemlya, France at Joe Cipher. His intention was to carry out deep-sea oceanographic research in the Arctic basin, but owing to fog and bad weather he reluctantly gave up and the expedition headed south. He had also hoped to carry out oceanographic research in the then little explored northern part of the Kara Sea, but the ice concentrations became progressively heavier until it was decided to turn back. In this Arctic expedition, Professor Vize's scientific zeal was tempered by Captain Chertkov's prudent decisions. Even so, the expedition was quite successful. Surface water temperatures were taken at 295 locations. Water samples were taken from 273 stations, and meteorological observations were duly taken every 4 hours. In 1937, Professor Vize went on Soviet icebreaker Sadko with R.L. Lazarevich and N. Evgenov on an expedition. Its goal was to sail to Henrietta, Jokov and Jeanette Islands in the Along Group and carry out scientific research. The purpose of the expedition was also to find out how could the Northern Sea route be used for regular shipping, but the Soviet naval authorities changed the plans on the icebreaker was sent instead to help ships in distress in the Kara and Laptev seas. The Sadko, however, became itself trapped in fast ice at 75 degrees 17 N and 132 degrees 28 E in the region of the New Siberian Islands. Two other Soviet icebreakers, the Sedov and the Maligan, who were in the same area researching the ice conditions, became trapped by sea ice as well and drifted helplessly, owing to persistent bad weather conditions. Part of the stranded crew members and some of the scientists could only be rescued in April 1938. And only on the 28th of August 1938, could icebreaker Yermak free two of the three ships at 83 degrees 4 N and 138 degrees 22 E. The third ship, Sedov, had to be left adrift in its icy prison and was transformed into a scientific polar station. It kept drifting northwards in the ice towards the pole, very much like Fridtjof Nansen's Fram had done in 1893–96. There were 15 crew aboard, led by Captain K.S. Badigian and W.K.H. Vinitsky. During the long drift, Professor Vize and his fellow scientists took 415 astronomical measurements, 78 electromagnetic observations, as well as 38 depth measurements by drilling the thick polar ice during their 812-day stay aboard the Sedov. Finally, they were freed between Greenland and Svalbard by icebreaker Joseph Stalin on the 18th of January 1940. A crew and scientists were welcomed back in the Soviet Union as heroes. After 22 years from his death, the Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute was named in his honor. Scientific works. His works include Moye Sovetskoye Arktiki, Moscow Leningrad 1948, the expedition on board the ice-breaking steamer Maligan to Zemlyu France Yosepha, 1933, the voyage of the icebreaker Maligan to Zemlyu France Yosepha in 1931, Trudy, Visa, W. Die Vorhersage Ereis Verhaltnis Barents Meer, Arktis I 1928. Georgy Yakovlevich Sedov, in Lupak V.S.